Welcome to Millennium TV 24. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to a good look at news with me, Kim Seabrook. And as you know, I always want to start off with New York, but this is actually upstate New York. So let's get into it. Advocates, they bring fresh food options to the ignored neighborhoods. So residents of Albany's South End now can grab fresh milk from sidewalk refrigerators, buy low-cost bananas from the Reggie Mobile, or fry up fresh eggs hatched in a local coop. Getting the same fresh food from a supermarket is more difficult. The nearest supermarket is more than a half a mile away from many in the modest neighborhoods. The sidewalk fridges, food trucks, and other programs fill in gaps, especially for residents with low incomes or without cars. And in an area shunned by chain supermarkets, advocates have tried other creative ways to make fresh food more accessible. Food insecurity is so bad in some of the more marginalized communities that we have to literally put a refrigerator outside on the street. And that was said by Jamila Anderson, who started the Free Food Fridge Albany. She started that last summer. She called the refrigerators a Band-Aid solution to the larger problem of a lack of resources in some communities. Albany's South End is a neighborhood full of brick and clapboard homes in the city of 96,000. And it stretches across areas with the majority black population. Dollar stores and convenience shops sell packaged foods, but people seeking a large selection of affordable produce typically face long walks or a bus trip. The South End is sometimes called a food desert due to its limited access and affordable and nutritious foods. Anderson and other activists use the term food apartheid because it points to systematic issues behind limited fresh food access, like discriminatory housing practices. So with grocery stores far away, advocates focus on bringing fresh groceries to the people. Billed by the nonprofit Capital Roots as a produce aisle on wheels, the Veggie Mobile started making stops in the Capital Region in 2006, later adding a second, smaller Sprout truck. The non-for-profit sells produce at cost and accepts government benefit program payments. The mobile markets complement community gardens and other fresh food programs that are organized by the group Anderson's organization pitches in with brightly painted refrigerators on the sidewalks in Albany and nearby Troy, reading free food and comida gratis. Stocking a red fridge on the residential street recently with lettuce, asparagus, bananas, cheese, she said. And the goal is to provide the freshest, healthiest food possible. Advocates recently announced plans to buy an empty building built as a McDonald's on the edge of the neighborhood and convert it into the South End Grocery under a public-private partnership. And that's going to be a space where burgers and fries were served, would offer fresh produce from local farms, meat, and other nutritious foods, said Trayvon Jackson, who is a non-for-profit Blue Light Development Group. Sounds great. That's what we like to hear. But unfortunately, now we have to get into some other news where in Queens, a boy dies in a suspicious house fire. Neighbors say family held bizarre candlelit Yoruba rituals. A 9-year-old boy was killed after a fire ripped through his Queens home, where his family allegedly held bizarre candlelit religious rituals. Officers said firefighters found Matthew Pichardo unconscious inside the multi-family home at 6937 Hillmeyer Avenue in Far Rockaway at 6:25 a.m. this past Sunday. The house fire was deemed suspicious, and authorities are investigating whether it was a case of arson. Neighbors, however, blamed the blaze on the family's religious rituals based on African Yoruba beliefs. According to a neighbor, the boy's family regularly used lit candles and practiced animal sacrifices. He said, "I see them killing animals sitting in a circle with their hands over their eyes, pouring the blood right where the fire started." Building owner Chessie Fishback was quoted, "They do this all the time, all weekend, killing animals," Fishback added. Though Picardo and 3 others were rushed to St. John's Hospital, the boy succumbed to his injuries. The other 3 are said to be in stable condition. And another neighbor also said that the family practiced the rituals every night. The beat, the drum, this is from Africa where I'm from. But no one does this anymore. FDNY officials found at least 20 votive candles in the kitchen and yard. There were also crates of live animals, naked life-size dolls, objects that looked like animal bones, and other paraphernalia. There was also a small shrine inside the fire-ravaged house. Meanwhile, the deceased child's uncle, Francisco Lopez, told us that he tried to save Matthew from the fire, admitting that he did practice Yoruba, and he was woken up by his sister Vanessa Nieves. And next in news, Lopez also said that he smashed the bedroom window using a golf club to save the child. Sorry, this goes on to the first news, but the flames shot out. However, he said he was clueless as to how the fire began. The boy 13, a man 19, and killed and 7 other injured in the spate of 6 shootings over 14 hours in New York City. New York City crime is rising. The spiral continues. And the fatal shootings occurred in the Bronx and Queens, and 7 others were also shot as the city's gun violence rages out of control, with many violent attacks occurring in the public places in broad daylight. Authorities say Javon Elliott, 13, was standing outside of Angel's Cafe with a friend on East 187th Street in the Bronx Belmont neighborhood at around 3:15 p.m. when he was gunned down in what police believe was a gang-related shooting. The fatal shootings occurred in the Bronx and Queens, and 7 others were also shot as the city's gun violence rages out of control, with many violent attacks occurring in public places in broad daylight. Authorities say Javon Elliott, 13, was standing outside of Angel's Cafe with a friend on East 187th Street in the Bronx Belmont neighborhood. In case you didn't hear it the first time, I had to repeat it for you the next time because I'm smiling, but this is really a sad situation. Actually, family I know knows this young man as well. So it's just a lot going on. And they stated it's gang related, but sometimes that's really not even a situation. But let's move forward. The incident took place within a 14-hour window that saw 2 other people killed and 6 others injured in 6 separate shootings around the Big Apple as the city's violent summer drags on. Hours before Javon was killed, an unnamed 19-year-old victim was fatally shot in Queens early Sunday morning, minutes after midnight. Police responded to reports of shots fired on Quincy Road in St. Albans, where they discovered the victim with a bullet wound to the left eye. Last week, New York became the first state in the nation to declare gun violence an emergency, as Governor Cuomo pointed the finger at the manufacturers of weapons as one of the main reasons behind the spate of shootings and killing that is at its highest level since the early 2000s. Cuomo targeted manufacturers of guns in a speech last week, with the bill allowing the New York Attorney General to sue them in some circumstances, and announced almost $139 million to invest to reduce the rapidly rising death toll. Weapon manufacturers could face a lawsuit for harming the public by failing to take steps to prevent firearms being sold unlawfully in New York, and that's just for instance. But next, we have hundreds of new city jail officers for Rikers put detaining advocates on guard. In March, Greg Williams testified before the city council about his experience being incarcerated on Rikers Island. He recalled observing groups of correction officers hanging out with one or the other for long periods, talking and basically doing nothing. But when it came time for them to transport him to video visits, the officers would often show up late, cutting his time short, he said. I can tell you from my time there how much time and money is wasted in that agency. William told the council's committee on criminal justice the city's jail employ 5 correction officers for every 3 incarcerated people. So that's a ratio 7 times higher than the national average. Some 7,575 correction officers oversee approximately 4,389 detainees, and that's as of July 9th. Yet the city recently passed a 2022 budget that provided for an additional 400 correction officers. Advocates for incarcerated people have pressed the Blasio administration to decrease the correction department's budget, and that's the largest of any jail agency in the country. That's by 10%. Instead, the budget was increased by $27 million over the budget passed by the council last year, coming in at $1.18 billion, records show. Jail experts, including a federal monitor overseeing the department and advocates for incarcerated people say staff shortages are due to mismanagement and that having too many officers exacerbates violence. They contend the city should conduct an independent analysis of its current staff and how they are deployed. There are a lot of officers who are on the payroll at certain jails who aren't actually working there, said Martin Horn, and he ran the correction department during the Bloomberg administration. Almost all officers prefer duties where they have little or no contact with the inmates, Horn stated, and that's including transportation, perimeter security, and working the visitation unit. Officers favored by supervisors often snag roles as record keepers and receptionists for wardens or deputy wardens, he added. Those jobs could be easily handled by civilians who earn less than correction officers, jail experts say. Makes a lot of sense. But let's move on to California. And California and other parts of the West broil and burn. Firefighters working in searing heat struggled to contain the largest wildfire in California this year, while state power operators urge people to conserve energy after a huge wildfire in neighboring Oregon disrupted the flow of electricity from 3 major transmission lines. A large swath of the West baked during the weekend in triple-digit temperatures that were expected to continue into the start of the work this week. The California Independent System Operator that manages the state's power grid issued a 5-hour flex alert starting at 4 p.m. Monday and asked consumers to conserve as much electricity as possible to avoid any outages. California and other parts of the West are sinking deeper into drought, and that has sent fire danger sky high in many areas. In Arizona, a small plane crashed Saturday during a survey of a wildfire in rural Mojave County, killing both crew members. The Beech C-90 aircraft was helping perform an investigation over the lightning-caused Cedar Basin fire near the tiny community of Wycup, northwest of Phoenix. Officials on Sunday identified the victims as Air Tactical Group survivor Jeff Pichura, 62, a retired Tucson area fire chief who was working for the Coronado National Forest, and Matthew Miller, 48, a pilot with Falcon Executive Aviation contracted by the U.S. Forest Service. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the crash. And next, what do we have? We have advocates decry homeless sweeps ahead of MLB's All-Star Game. Very interesting story. Ahead of Major League Baseball All-Star Game in Denver this week, city officials are facing scrutiny from advocates who accuse them of accelerating the clearing of homeless encampments near Coors Field as the sports world returns to its attention to Colorado's capital city. Mayor Michael Hancock has emphatically denied that the All-Star Game influenced any clearing decisions, saying that the city is just getting caught up after suspending cleanups at the beginning of the pandemic. It resumed regular cleanups last summer, but officials knew that before the city was chosen as the All-Star host, that it faced a big cleanup effort with more encampments than ever, Hancock said. And cleanups also called homeless sweeps. Encampments are fenced off, and the people living in tents there are told to pack up and leave so that the area could be clean. And in March, just before Denver was chosen as a substitute host, Major League Baseball pulled it from Atlanta in April over objections to Georgia's voting laws that critics condemned as being too restrictive. Data shows sweeps increased, with cleanups taking place over 9 days. The previous peak over the past year was 8 days in October. People are forced to leave an encampment near the stadium last week were told that they could go to another one about 1.5 miles away. And we're going to go into a quick commercial break. I'll be right back with a good look at news on Millennium TV 24.
Millennium TV, bridging Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
I do want to continue with the story that we were just discussing about the MLB All-Stars cleaning out the homeless from where they, are staying. So Patrick Shields, who is an Army veteran who served in Afghanistan, was among the people forced to pick up and leave during a recent sweep on a grass strip outside an office building. It's about 2.5 miles from the Coors Field. Shields, who has been on the street for 8 months after being released from jail, was upset that he and residents he considered to be like family were being forced to move when it would be cheaper to just help them stay in one place. But that's what he wanted to say. I just wanted to elaborate that they're just letting people go and they have nowhere to go. So if we can put them in places where they can feel safe and also the community feel safe, it'd just be more better and beneficial. But let's move on. 4 arrested, guns seized at hotel near the All-Star Game events. While we're talking about the All-Star Game, I figured it makes sense to go into this. 4 people have been arrested and more than a dozen weapons and hundreds of rounds of ammunition have been seized at a downtown Denver hotel that is close to several events planned in conjunction with the upcoming Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Officers responding to a tip searched 2 rooms at the Maven Hotel, a block from Coors Field, on Friday night. 3 men and a woman in their 40s were arrested, and 2 vehicles were impounded to be searched for evidence. The recovered weapons included several rifles, a law enforcement official told us, and so far investigators have not found any evidence to suggest that the group was plotting a mass shooting or other similar attacks. The official stated while cautioning that the investigation is still in its early stages. The official could not discuss the matter publicly and spoke to us on the condition of the anonymity. Authorities were called after an employee found the guns in a hotel room. And the men who were arrested are being investigated for possession of a weapon by a previous offender, and a woman who has a separate warrant is being investigated on a drug charge. We have no reason, again, to believe that this incident was connected to terrorism or a threat directed at the All-Star Game, the FBI said in a statement released. And we are not aware of any threat to the All-Star Game events, venues, players, or the community at this time. But meanwhile, Mayor Michael Hancock and Police Chief Paul Pazin praised the hotel staff for alerting authorities and sought to ease any concerns that the area around the ballpark is unsafe. They declined to say what, if anything, the suspects were planning to do with the firearms. Coors Field will host the All-Star Game, but festivities have been underway in and around the ballpark and downtown for the past several days. Police said in a statement that visitors should always be aware of their surroundings and report any suspicious or illegal behavior. What's the saying? If you see something, say something, I guess, right? But let's move on. 50 tons of marijuana plants, processed pot seized in Southern California. Law enforcement officers uprooted more than 100,000 illegal marijuana plants and seized almost 10,000 pounds of processed marijuana in a raid. This was just last week on 51 properties in Anza. 5 people were arrested, the Riverside County Sheriff's Department stated, and the Sheriff's Department has conducted numerous operations in Anza and other parts of rural southwest Riverside County to counteract illegal growing, water theft, and violence that included the slaying of 7 people in September at a property in Aguana, where marijuana was grown. No arrests have been announced in that case. But after the shooting, Sheriff Shad Bianco said to expect even more enforcement. Thursday, some 100,343 marijuana plants were confiscated and 9,806 pounds of processed marijuana was seized for a total combined weight of more than 50 tons. 13 firearms, 8 handguns, 4 rifles, and 1 shotgun also was taken, as was $49,546 in cash. But next in Florida, unfortunately, the search in Florida collapsed to take weeks. The death reached 90. Authorities searching for victims of a deadly collapse in Florida said that they hope to conclude their painstaking work in the coming weeks as a team of first responders from Israel departed the site. Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Cava said 90 deaths have now been confirmed in last month's collapse of the 12-story Champlain Towers South in Surfside, up from 86 a day before. Among them are 71 bodies that have been identified, and their families have been notified. She says some 31 people remain listed as missing. The Miami-Dade Police Department said 3 young children were amongst those recently identified. Crews continue to search the remaining pile of rubble, peeling layer after layer of debris in search of bodies. The unrelenting search has resulted in the recovery of over 14 million pounds of concrete and debris. Miami-Dade Fire Chief Alan Kaminsky said it was uncertain when recovery operations will be completed because it remains hard to know when the final body would be found. Members of the crew that have been searching the site 24 hours a day since the collapse lined both sides of the street, shaking hands and bidding farewell to the Israeli team. The Israeli team joined other task force from around the United States to assist first responders from Miami and Miami-Dade County, working in 12-hour shifts. They have searched through South Florida's intense summer heat and in pouring rain, pausing only when lightning was spotted nearby. They also paused operations as officials made plans to implode the steel standing portion of the condo tower on July 4th. The Israeli team used blueprints of the building to create detailed 3D images of the disaster site to aid in the search. They also gathered information from families of the missing, many of who were Jewish, to build a room-by-room model laying out where people would have been sleeping during the pre-dawn collapse. 4 teams from Florida, Indiana, and Pennsylvania are still dedicated to the recovery efforts. Teams from Virginia, New Jersey, and Ohio are preparing to leave. To give you an answer when we feel we'll recover everyone, I can't give you an exact date, said the fire chief. But we're doing everything that we can, everything possible, until we feel that we've delayered every floor. And we send our condolences out to the families. But let's move on to, in politics, Latino Republicans in Congress reflect on GOP gains with Hispanics. A diverse roster of conservative candidates on the ballot in 2020 helped produce massive gains with the Hispanic community. Multiple congressional Latino Republicans stated, "The messenger matters." Texas Representative Tony Gonzalez, who represents a district that's nearly 70% Hispanic, told the DCNF, "I think it's so critical that we have, members that reflect the district." Garcia beat his Democratic opponent, Christy Smith, twice in 2020, winning both the special and the general election. He noted that engaging with the Latino community early and establishing trust is crucial to turning out voters for the party, even among those who historically vote Democrat. Our job is to make sure that we're reaching out to them and conveying our message and making sure that they know the candidate as much as anything else, he stated. Gonzalez offered a similar perspective when talking about how he ran his campaign. While he released ads in Spanish from the beginning of the race, it wasn't Republican primary voters he was targeting. I was talking to Democrats, general election voters, and I invested time and energy and effort into that early. From Gonzalez's perspectives, the Democrats failed to take the same amount of interest. But if you only show up once to a community, they're going to see you as disingenuous. But from their own conversations on the ground, Republicans could tell the Democratic Party that had moved too far to the left on the issues Latinos cared most about. The Democratic Party was really good at selling, their ideals, and that they were really watching out for them. Jimenez said, but Hispanics caught on. But regardless of what trends within the Hispanic community, each representative made clear that Latinos were not a monolith. Hispanics get all lumped in together, and we're just different subcultures, Gonzalez said. More than one representative listed off various Latin American countries, passionately pointed out that each was different from the other and should not be grouped together on all things. So, for instance, do we speak the same language? Yes. But do we eat the same food? No, Jimenez said. We think, as individuals, we will act as individuals, and we will vote as individuals. And that's your news right there. But next we have Black farmers might not receive their own debt relief funding. Earlier this year, Black farmers were slated to receive billions of dollars in federal aid to wipe away their U.S. Department of Agriculture loans. The chance of actually getting that money, however, is starting to wither. That's because 2 federal judges have blocked Black, brown, and other farmers of color from getting the debt relief payments. Judges in recent weeks have granted temporary injunctions on the debt subsidies after lawsuits from white farmers surfaced, claiming that the funding is racially discriminatory. U.S. District Judge Marsha Morales Howard of Jackson, Florida, set an injunction Wednesday, 1 month after white farmer Scott Wynn of Jennings, Florida, filed a lawsuit arguing that he couldn't apply for the debt relief program. U.S. Judge William Greisbach in Milwaukee also issued a temporary restraining order after the conservative Wisconsin Institution for Law and Liberty filed suit in April, arguing that white farmers aren't eligible for that program, amounting to a violation of their constitutional rights. There are similar legal challenges in Tennessee, Texas, and Wyoming. John Boyd Jr., president of the National Black Farmers Association, said that the cases mark an unjustified delay in relief that farmers of color have been owed for decades, as most of all federal farming aid has historically flowed to white farmers. Boyd said that his organization is ready for a lengthy legal battle if that's what it takes. I will fight all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, Boyd said in a statement. At issue is the Emergency Relief for Farmers of Color Act, which passed Congress in the spring. The legislation funnels $4 billion to the USDA to forgive direct or guaranteed loan given to farmers and ranchers of color. Another $1 billion was slated for farmers' grants, college scholarships, and other efforts for minority growers. More recently, farmers of color say it has been tough to get farm loans because lenders see them as more likely to operate smaller, lower revenue farms, have weaker credit histories, or lack clear title to their agricultural land. Howard argued that any minority farmer could apply for the debt relief funding, even ones who have had profitable years. Yet a small white farmer who is on the brink of foreclosure can do nothing to qualify for debt relief. Howard wrote in the ruling, adding that she believes Congress is using discrimination to try to solve years of discrimination. And what we're going to do, we're going to go into a break. My name is Kim Seabrook. You're watching Millennium TV 24. We'll be right back.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying tuned in. I do want to finish the story on the black farmers issue. Very important. So let's go back into it. Congress, I wanted to end it with this, or started with what I ended it with. Congress is using discrimination to try to solve years of discrimination. Gather that, okay? But black farmers received just 0.1% of the pandemic relief slated for farmers under the Trump administration. The USD official stated that they will forcefully defend their plans to send aid to farmers of color. The agency was scheduled to start sending payments to farmers of color this month. The $5 billion for Farmers of Color Act was part of a larger $10.4 billion total aid package for coronavirus relief under the American Rescue Plan, where white farmers are eligible to tap some of those funds. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. Just wanted to make sure I provide all that information. But let's move on. Biden says that the U.S. stands with Cuban people. Protests are a clarion call for freedom. President Joe Biden said that the United States supports the Cuban people and called their rare protest a clarion call for freedom and relief from the pandemic and generations of dictatorship. We stand with the Cuban people and their clarion call for freedom and relief from the tragic grip of the pandemic and from the decades of repression and economic suffering to which they have been subjected by Cuba's authoritarian regime. In a statement that was by Biden, but the Cuban people are bravely asserting fundamental and universal rights. Those rights are including the right of peaceful protest and the right to freely determine their own future must be respected. The United States calls out on the Cuban regime to hear the people and serve their needs at this vital moment rather than enriching themselves. The president's response comes one day after thousands of people took to the streets in cities and towns across Cuba, including Havana, to call for an end to the nation's decade-old dictatorship and demand food and vaccines as shortages of basic necessities have reached crisis proportion and COVID-19 cases have soared. The unprecedented protest erupted in several of the island's largest cities, and videos also show members of the police beating and even shooting demonstrators after Cuba's handpicked president told his loyalists to go out and confront protesters. We'll do anything, he said, to stop the uprising. The streets are for the revolutionaries. But on Sunday evening, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan tweeted that the United States would strongly condemn any violence or targeting of the peaceful protesters who are exercising their universal rights. Last time Cubans took to the streets to protest against the communist government was in 1994 when Fidel Castro was alive. But the uprising known as the Malenconzo only took place in Havana and didn't last long, as the former Cuban leader quickly turned the demonstrations into a massive exodus after he opened Cuba's maritime borders. And next we have, yes, Zaila Avant-Garde. She makes spelling history and other moments from the B. The last word after hundreds of competitors fell to some of the dictionary's most colorful monsters, said Mariah, when Zaila Avant-Garde 14 spelled it correctly on Thursday nights. She put her hands to her head, beamed, and twirled her way through confetti and into spelling history as the first Black American to win the Scripps National Spelling Bee. The victory gave an extra polish to Zaila's already remarkable resume. Not only has she competed in spelling bees for 2 years, she already holds 3 Guinness World Records for dribbling, bouncing, and juggling basketballs, all before the 9th grade. So now I get to get a nice trophy, which is the best part of anyone, she said in an interview. And she also won a $50,000 prize. She said that she hoped to see more African American students doing well in the Scripps Spelling Bee in a few years. The bee, she said, was a gate opener to being interested in education. Zaila's journey from her hometown near New Orleans to the Spelling Bee Finals in Orlando, Florida, spanned 2 years, 18 rounds of competition, and tens of thousands of words that she poured over with her father. But that is your news today, and I thank you so much for tuning in to Millennium TV 24 and the Good Looking News with me, Kim Seabrook. We'll see you next time.